The Oversoul is a term coined by Ralph Waldo Emerson in 1841. Almost 200 years passed, and this word Oversoul still is not mainstream. Think of the Oversoul as a hub of consciousness, all right? Not a separate entity, but a central intelligence that expresses itself through many individual lives, perspectives, and forms, right? So if consciousness were meant to experience only one life, one body, one timeline, there would be no need for an oversoul, right? But consciousness wanted range, depth, contrast, memory. So one oversoul equals many lifetimes, right? Many lifetimes equals many vantage points. And all vantage points equals shared intelligence. So multiplicity is not fragmentation, it's efficiency. So here's the question, okay? So who are you really?
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Shifting Dimensions podcast, where we explore the unseen, the unknown, and the transformative moments that shift our understanding of reality. I'm your host, Jumi Moses, spiritual seeker and metaphysical investigator, exploring the mysteries of existence. On the show today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Niko the Medium. Niko is a trance and evidential medium, mentor, and author offering messages, guidance, and teachings from the unseen realms. His purpose is to help others open their awareness, rediscover their sacred abilities, and remember the truth of who they are. He is the author of the Threads of Infinity trilogy, where he explores consciousness, the higher self, and the ongoing dialogue between the human and spirit aspects of awareness. Niko, thank you so much for being here today. I'm so delighted to have you here on Shifting Dimensions.
Thank you, Jimmy. It's a pleasure being here. I appreciate it.
Of course. So I want to start off by getting to know more about you and your experience, right? So take us back in time, you growing up. When did you start connecting with spirit, and what was that journey like for you?
I'm from New York originally, a very loud and busy city. And when I was very young, like around 6, 7 years old, I actually had a visitation. Three beings entered from my window. They didn't really speak, they collided, and I could sense their energy from that point on. As life is, these are the same three beings now that work through me primarily through trance. So that's really cool to connect the dots after such a long time. When I was 19, my cousin and I were in a car accident, and he passed away from that car accident. And he was actually very instrumental, like a year after his death, a lot of synchronicities, a lot of connecting pieces, a lot of things happening that only he could have been the one doing them. Even at one point, he spoke to me as I was walking through a park. So there's a lot that happened to me from 19 on, especially. But again, I was in New York, and my circle of friends and family, they're not into all this. I come from a Greek Orthodox religion. This is very taboo. So I think I spent most of my years trying to find my identity. Do I go with my gut feeling, or do I follow what I'm supposed to be following in the teachings and what people expect of me? So there was a lot of me shelving this a lot throughout most of my life. But again, I could sense spirit. I'm very sensitive to spirit energy. And after a while, I just kept going back to it, going back to it. Had a great first awakening, if you want to say that, in New Mexico. I met a sage, and she was amazing. And everything she told me or taught me, I already knew. I'm like, how do I really know this? This is brand new to me. So this is where it started for me. The consciousness started for me. And after my divorce, I moved to a beautiful Greek island, and that's when it got quiet. It wasn't as noisy and as busy as New York, and I was able to hear my own thoughts, and a lot of amazing coincidences happened on this land. Hearing my name being called, nobody's in the house, a visitation from my cousin again. Just a lot of wonderful things that I wrote about in these books that I've been nudged to write for my spirit team. So I started off with my interest, Niko's interest, the human's interest, past life regression, angel oracle cards, Reiki master, but I still felt unfulfilled. Then I went into evidential mediumship, and it was great. But again, I was entering all of these modalities based on the lens of the human form, the human identity. That's what you're taught here. So I really wasn't, I was just scratching the surface. I wasn't really getting in there deep. when I got into trance, that's when the doors opened. That's when I realized, okay, this is about consciousness. It's not about human intellect. You can't connect the spirit with the mind or the body because we're all consciousness. See, then the more I really learned from my own spirit team, and especially through trance, which kind of like trance is like how the human system remembers it was never confined to one dimension of consciousness. That opens another doorway. And even though I wrote a trilogy about the higher self, that was my main purpose. Now it's been explained to me. I'm going to write many more books. I'm writing a complete cosmology of consciousness from within, the architecture of consciousness from within, from spirit side, not from the human intellect. So that's going to be a lot of fun. And now the fourth book I'm writing about is the Oversoul. Now, this is really cool. This is what we're going to start with, if it's good with you. It's okay with you. The Oversoul is a term coined by Ralph Waldo Emerson in 1841. Almost 200 years passed, and this word Oversoul still is not mainstream, right? But Oversoul, think of the Oversoul as a hub of consciousness, right? Not a separate entity, but a central intelligence that expresses itself through many individual lives, perspectives, and forms, right? So you are not a fragment broken off of something larger. You are a point of experience within a larger field of awareness. See, the oversoul isn't divided, it's distributed. This is when people really get confused. You're not a piece missing from the whole, you're a perspective the whole chose to experience itself through, right? So if consciousness were meant to experience only one life, one body, one timeline, there would be no need for an oversoul, right? But consciousness wanted range, depth, contrast, memory. So one oversoul equals many lifetimes, right? Many lifetimes equals many vantage points. And all vantage points equals shared intelligence. So multiplicity is not fragmentation, it's efficiency. So here's the question, okay? So who are you really? You're not just the personality offering this podcast or the personalities listening to this podcast. You're not just the body. You're not even just the higher self guiding you. You are a living access point, a node through which Oversoul experiences this moment. Isn't that cool?
Extremely
Your
cool.
intuition, your intuition then makes sense. Your sense of familiarity with certain ideas makes sense. Your pull toward meaning makes sense. So when something resonates, it's not new information, it's recognition traveling through the hub.
This is
And
brilliant,
this is
Niko.
also brilliant. It's just not spoken of often. But this is how, this also changes how we see others, right? Think about this. If every person is a node within a larger field of consciousness, then no one is truly separate, right? We're not competing souls, we're complementary perspectives. That explains empathy, synchronicity. And this explains why some people feel instantly familiar. Because recognition happens when 2 points of the same intelligence brush against each other.
We're starting off really hot with this conversation, and I love it because it's so interesting, right? Because it's weird. And we had a brief conversation before hitting record where I was like, I typically don't send questions ahead of time because I like the conversation to flow where it needs to flow. But I have questions that I still obviously prepare to ask my guests. And when
Of
I tell
course.
you, Niko, everything you just expressed, I have written down in question form. I was going to ask you about the oversoul. I was going to ask you, well, how
Look at
would you
that.
define consciousness? And especially if we understand the concept of the oversoul and having
Right.
multiple perspectives and that perspective feeding into a greater intelligence, then what does that mean for our understanding of ourselves and each other? And you basically
Exactly.
just touched on all those points. It's as if you were looking at my notebook and just like answering the questions.
We all knew his spirit, connected,
Exactly. We're aligned. We're aligned. This is a very aligned
right?
conversation. All right. So let's backtrack a little bit, right? And let's try to dig deeper into some of the things that you just talked about so that the audience is fully following the conversation. Because you and I, when we talk about consciousness, I understand what you mean. You understand what you mean. But let's start off by defining what is consciousness, right? And
Okay.
then defining a little bit deeper what the oversoul is.
Okay, so let's simplify it, right? Consciousness is like the internet. The oversoul is the network. The higher self is your personal interface. And you, this human life, are the browser window open right now,
That's a great
right?
analogy. Yeah.
The oversoul is the intelligence you belong to. It's also you, it's your essence. The higher self is how it guides you. And the human life is how it learns through you, which is still one essence, right? Each just has a different perspective of consciousness, a different awareness, a different evolution. But it's still one consciousness, one essence.
Right. How I also picture it too is I hope I can find the right words, but imagine having like a square or rectangular shaped board and it has a
Hmm.
bunch of tiny little holes in it. And let's say behind that board is like this ball of light. And when that ball of light is pushed against that board that has all the tiny little holes, it that light is streamed or funneled through multiple tiny holes. So the person on the other side will be seeing that light as multiple tiny streams of elongated light, if that makes any sense. So when we're talking about the oversoul, I think about like that ball of light behind the rectangular block with the tiny holes is the oversoul. And when it puts itself against that board and peers through the different tiny holes, it's like those are the different perspectives that it's picking up at the same time. Those are the different lifetimes or incarnations, right? And all those different perspectives, all those different incarnations. And in your analogy, that particular tab, like each tiny hole is like one of those tabs that is open on
Right.
on the internet browser. And each of those different perspectives give a different understanding, which is the definition of perspective. So I think that's what you're talking about in terms of the oversoul.
Yeah.
And again, consciousness in this perspective would be the different perspectives that are being funneled back to that oversoul from the different incarnations that it's experiencing at once.
We're all consciousness.
Yes.
Even right now, your soul's not in this body. It's the consciousness, the essence that's projected to this reality, and it's anchored into the body through the breath. That's how the breath is the life force of the body. The breath mirrors the consciousness, your essence.
Yes.
That's what it is. We're always consciousness. You don't need to become anything to access the oversoul. You only need to stop believing you were ever separate from it.
Right.
And in that, you understand how consciousness shifts.
We
It's
all
only a shift of consciousness, is all this is.
So we all have our own oversoul, correct? Or is the over
Absolutely.
Okay, so every individual has their own oversoul, and each oversoul kind of feeds into this unified field of consciousness, right? Like
Right.
we're all in this unified field of consciousness. And you talked about writing more about the cosmology of consciousness
Yeah.
and how it really works. And people will say that when people are, for example, experiencing different lifetimes, right? Whether they're
Yeah.
doing the past life regression, sometimes it's not, it might be consciousness just like hopping from one perspective to
R-
another perspective.
Conscious overlap. It's exactly right. And it's not even a past life. There are parallel lives going on right now. You're only aware of Jumi in this life, but there's multiple ones happening at the same exact time. So when you have that dream that you just know it, you've been there before, but you don't know this place, so you know that's you, but it doesn't look familiar, that's conscious overlap. It's still consciousness. Your higher self is not only governing this one incarnation, but multiple ones across this border consciousness. So you're always overlapping. Trance is simply the state where the human identity softens enough for the oversoul's coherence to come forward. That's when in trance you're really connected to the higher self. You as the higher self it's you're always one, but your consciousness now overlaps to the higher self, and now you're aware of multiple parallel realities. It's
Right.
not channeling something foreign, it's allowing the hub to speak through one of its access points.
Right.
That's what
Okay.
trance is. Now you mentioned the oversoul, which is right, but then you mentioned the infinite field of consciousness. That's right above the oversoul. So here's the creator, okay? The creator's in this pure infinite field of consciousness. The creator doesn't have to evolve. The creator created an expression of itself. This is all of our origin points. That's your first you as an essence ever created. That exists in this field of infinite consciousness. That's also where archangels and the angel realm is. Okay? There are I call them perceivers because they witness the whole incarnation. There are perceivers who have never incarnated, like angels or archangels, and there's other perceivers that never incarnated. The fact that we incarnated is the fact that our perceiver, our origin point, wanted to express itself through life experiences, through incarnations. And that's how the Oversoul was created. Like a hub of intelligence, it also stores all lives ever lived, all intelligences, all memory, everything. It also governs the structure. From the Oversoul comes the higher self, which is also you.
Can we talk
And
about
that,
that a little bit, Niko?
yeah,
Sorry. So that's the part that I'm slightly confused by. And for the listeners, when Niko talks about trance, he's talking about trance mediumship, which we're going to get a little bit deeper into
yeah, not the
later.
dance, not the music.
Yeah, he's talking about trance mediumship, which again we'll talk about a little bit later. But so the oversoul and then the higher self, I think I'm getting that kind of still confused in
Yeah,
my
no
head.
problem.
So can we just re like can we
Yeah,
can you I
yeah.
guess break that
So,
down a little bit further for me?
so the perceiver creates the oversoul. Okay, the oversoul is this vast, intelligent hub, let's say. It's just very powerful. It has to store everything. It's like the perceiver's personal library. When people speak about Akashic records, it's not a library in the cosmic realm. The Akashic records they're referring to is their own oversoul. This is where everything you experience is stored. This is how the perceiver grows and learns, right? Whatever choices you make now, there's never any right or wrong because any decision you make or any decision that alters your trajectory or any decision how you inflict pain or love on somebody else is never a right or wrong because it's always a learning process. And not just for your parallel life, for your life, the parallel lives as well. So the oversoul is just gathering all this information when all life experiences are over, the wisdom born of the pain, not the actual experience, is brought back to the oversoul and it stores it. It's the hub, the library, right? The Akashic records, if you will. But the oversoul is way too powerful. Energetic wise, intelligence wise, it'll just overwhelm the physical form. That's why there's no way your soul could be in the body. It would just combust. It's too powerful. The higher self, now again, the perceiver is your soul, the oversoul is your soul, and the higher self is your soul. So the higher self is fragmented off of the oversoul, let's say. This is the governing body of your incarnation. This is your intuition. Your inner knowing, the right from wrong. This one holds the map of your entire life's journey. If there's no time, it's already every possible outcome has already been played over, and the oversoul knows every direction and where it's in the lead. So they give the map to your higher self to govern this life, right? You as the human self, the soul closer to the human incarnation, is what's navigating through this world, right? The human identity is created in the existence. It's got nothing to do with your soul. Most of humanity relies only on their human identity. Your titles, your roles, relationships, your work status, whatever. Your need to be accepted, your need for success, whatever, based on your life experience, is your identity defines you. But it's not you. It's a character that you're portraying. I wrote about this on Facebook, one post. Your human identity is your character. Your human self is the actor portraying the character, and your higher self is the director directing the experience. We're just the character, the human identity. When we can let that go and soften it, you're never going to remove it because you need it. That's how you're experiencing life and also affecting parallel lives. But your human self is always guiding you, never forcing you, guiding you through intuition, that sixth sense, the inner knowing. And if you notice, you're always rerouted back to alignment of your soul's purpose.
And that's the higher self.
The higher self is doing that, which is also you. And that's the same consciousness, just the higher self doesn't enter the human realm, if you will, and the higher self is also translating oversoul wisdom into human understanding.
Okay, I was just about to say that as you were talking, the impression I got was like the the higher self is essentially the wisdom born of the oversoul, which again, human, like these things are
Yeah,
ineffable. So we're trying as best as we can to put this into language to express
yeah,
what what
but
we're talking about. But would you say that's
yeah, but so is
accurate?
your human self. You're
Right.
all one. You're not separate. Even your human self, okay, you're the soul closest to this body. You are the higher self. You're the same. So now what happens is that when people get caught up in the human identity and they lose sight that they're even the soul, there's no way they understand they even have a higher self. And a lot of these courses and teachings and circles, they focus on meet your spirit guides, and then maybe some of them say the higher self. Nobody speaks about the oversoul. That's also you. Nobody at all speaks about the perceiver. That's my fifth book. Fourth book is the oversoul. Fifth is the perceiver. It's the architecture that's never changed. We've just got so caught up in the human identity, we've lost sight of it. So that's why trance. I think everyone on this planet should be doing trance, and they do trance anyway. They enter the trance state before they go to sleep. So everybody experiences trance, or that when they're in the zone, an athlete, a musician, that's also trance. But people fear it because they're told to fear it in order for the religious institutions and governmental agencies to have control. So they instill fear in trance because at one time, trance was the purest form of communication, the main source. You didn't need an intermediary.
Mm.
But when people develop their trance, because everybody has the ability, because you're all a soul. But when you develop the stillness of the mind, softening the human self, the human identity, in trance, you're reconnected to your higher self and you're still infiltrating the oversoul wisdom. That's why you remember things. They're not taught here, like this structure we're talking about. That's why you can sense parallel lives. That's why you realize, oh, this is my soul's journey. And then when you come back, the human identity is softened. What used to bother you no longer does.
But I think the reason why a lot of people don't talk about oversouls, my theory would be the fact that I think people think of oversoul and higher self as the
As
same
one. Yeah, I know.
concept. And that's why in me having this conversation with you, I was like, okay, what's the difference? Because a lot of what you're talking about regarding the oversoul, people have described as the higher self.
Which isn't
So,
correct.
okay, let me ask you this question. How do you get your information? Like a lot of these insights that you're giving about consciousness, about the oversoul, parallel lives, all of that stuff, where are you getting this information from?
Okay, so like we said, the human identity, we're taught, right? When you lose a lost loved one, what happens is that 80% of people go through a grieving period that they just can't receive that comfort they're seeking from another human. So they turn to the metaphysics, they turn to the spiritual realm in hopes to first have proof that their loved one went on and is safe. And then they're intrigued because they can sense the presence of them near. So from the human vantage point, you have the loved ones first, and then behind them, they're going to help you find your spirit team, the ones that are here to guide you. Okay. Like I said, everybody normally stops there. But the spirit team members are going to help you shift your focus, awareness to your higher self. When that happens, and a lot of it is through trance, you start remembering. It's the remembrance that over the higher self has wisdom from the oversoul to the human form, right? When the body is formed, Your higher self places a portion of itself into the human mind. That's what we call awareness. Okay. And your human self is your soul. That's the breath that attaches to the body. The intellectual human mind cannot create emotion. It's not wired that way. It identifies it, evaluates it, and gives it a label, but it cannot create it. You create it because you are that soul. That's the emotion. The human self brings the emotion. Your awareness is how you connect to spirit, not from the human intellect. Because when this incarnation begins and that awareness is there, it's shared awareness with you as the higher self and you as the human self, shared awareness. And the meeting point is in the center of what we call the human consciousness field. That's closest to the body, and most of the planet believes it's the auric field. It's not. It's the human consciousness field. You connect essence to essence. That's the inner layer. That's where the awareness is in. That's closest to your body. The outer layer is the auric field. And that's where spirit connects. So all evidential mediumship happens from there. Spirit connects to the auric field. It impresses the human consciousness field. Your awareness, directed by the higher self, shared awareness, is how you understand the spirit. In trance, you're not translating or responding or reporting. I would say evidential trance should be notice and report. Don't translate. It's not your evidence at all, so don't hold on to it. In trance, you don't have to worry about reporting anything. You just shift your focus to the awareness. And because it's a shared awareness, the more you do trance, the more you surrender the human identity, the ego, the more you believe you are essence, you're interfacing with your higher self on a on an intimate level where that awareness again is one. So when you
Okay.
come out of it, you're starting to view this human existence from the lens of your higher self because you're always in that awareness space. That's
Mm,
softening the human identity. The more that happens, then the higher self is okay, great. You've sustained. You don't keep going back to the human identity. You're not questioning. You're not translating it your way. You're not doing this for the ego. You're not doing it for accolades. You're here to be of service to spirit and fulfill your soul's purpose. Now, let's go a little bit further, and now let's bring oversoul level wisdom into that awareness. When that happens, it depends on what type of oversouls we are. I happen to be an architecture oversoul. And that means that architecture oversoul remembers the actual architecture. My purpose is to bring the knowledge of that true architecture back to humanity, to remember it. It's also by doing that, it's like I assist others to connect to their oversoul. So that's my oversoul's characteristics, and that makes sense on my entire journey thus far. So when that happens, it's all remembrance.
okay. So
It's
if I
remembrance through awareness.
Okay, got it. So your knowledge and the wisdom that you're imparting right now, a lot of it is coming from your work as a trans medium and
Yeah,
connecting directly with spirit and getting those like direct knowings,
yeah.
direct knowledge. Okay.
Not spirit, with my higher self and
With
my oversoul.
with your higher self and your oversoul. Okay,
Right.
got it. Because it sounds very similar to some of the work that Frederick Myers has done, and I don't know if you're familiar with him. He was a psychologist in the late 18th to 19th century, and a lot of his work, which was unacknowledged for a very long time. He wrote a book about the survival of awareness after death. That's a paraphrase of the title, but essentially he talks about the subliminal self and he did different research into how it's possible for the human personality to survive bodily death because he lost someone close to him and he was trying to figure out how he's able to communicate with that person that he lost. And part of the evidence he put together for the ability for human beings to survive bodily death had to do with him participating and going to seances, which has to do a lot with trans mediumship like we're talking about. So I see parallels with what you're saying and some of the evidence that he put forth about human awareness, human consciousness, because he also talked about conscious
Yeah.
evolution and communication beyond the earthly realm, which is, again, that's what I think you're touching on. But we've talked extensively about trans mediumship. And for those who are listening who don't fully understand what that means, you've explained it, but let's get to the bare bones of it. What is trans
Okay.
mediumship? And what are you doing in that state? Because you talked about connecting with your higher self, but my understanding, for example, of trans mediumship is not connecting with your higher self per se, but connecting with a spirit from the other side. So just would love to
Okay.
hear
So,
more.
all right, when people hear trance, they think altered state. I see it as altered orientation. All right. Consciousness doesn't go somewhere else. It changes where it's anchored. So dimensions are not places. They're positions of awareness, right? So trance is a shift in which layer of consciousness is foregrounded. The physical world doesn't disappear. It becomes secondary. So trance is not leaving this dimension. It's allowing another dimension of consciousness to speak through the same body. That's what trance is. And going back to the structural part of it, what people call dimensional bleed throughs, synchronicities, intuition, trance, contact. This isn't random, it's structural. Human consciousness is becoming less rigid. The oversoul layer is pressing closer to awareness, and then trance emerges naturally when the system can no longer sustain separation. So the rise of trance isn't mystical timing, it's the result of consciousness no longer being able to pretend it's isolated. That's why people are interested in trance again. Not because of trance, their consciousness is expanding,
100%. And I think this kind of gives rise to the conversation that I see a lot online about shifting
right?
realities. And obviously people talk about it. There are two perspectives that I've come to understand in terms of shifting. People talk about like escaping their reality and being like in a more fantasy type existence where they're part of the Harry Potter world. And that's not
Yeah,
necessarily what I'm talking about. I'm talking about shifting. And when people talk about shifting their reality, where they talk about, okay, if they're in a reality where they're sick, they want to jump to a reality or a timeline where they're no longer chronically ill, right? And I think that touches on what we're talking about here in terms of like consciousness, right? Like consciousness being able to jump from one perspective to the next perspective. And like you said, it's different dimensions of awareness,
right.
but also that those different dimensions of awareness, like, also shape our reality, our external three-dimensional reality, if we're able to jump from one consciousness or one perspective to the next.
It shapes perception of the 3D.
Mm,
Also, realize you're talking about the 17th, 18th century, right? 19th century. They had limited language to express themselves.
yes.
Our language has evolved. So even spirit communication is not messages traveling across dimensions. We perceive it is, but it's not. It's coherence between dimensions that were never truly separate. The oversoul exists across dimensions simultaneously. Trance allows the human system, the 3D realm, to align with that broader architecture. So evidence arises because coherence collapses separation.
Mm.
Spirit doesn't cross dimensions to reach us. We relax the boundary that made them seem separate in the first place.
And this is what you talk about the evolution of communication between the physical and non-physical worlds.
Right. Exactly. Fear belongs to the human mind trying to map the unknown. True trance doesn't lower consciousness, it stabilizes it. And
Mm.
stabilized consciousness doesn't access chaos. In trance, I stabilize consciousness. That's what I'm doing. I'm bridging, let's say, the human mind, the fear, everything you've been taught, the conditioning of the mind, I'm softening the human identity. I'm connecting with the human self into the higher self. I'm stabilizing consciousness. And that's how trance happens.
So essentially, just to add to what you're saying, the filters, the typical mental filters that we have up to block our ability to permeate a larger and wider consciousness field, that those defenses are slowly but surely on a an individual and collective level, those defenses are coming
Yeah.
down. So
Yeah.
we are able to perceive things that seem separate from us because everything is happening here all at once. There, yeah, okay.
The human identity is softening, so the defenses are slowly coming down, and their awareness is kicking into high gear into the consciousness, human consciousness field. That's why you have this global awakening process. People are all starting to question. It's not new. It's always been there. But we've been so ruled by the human identity for centuries. But it got to the point now that humanity was out of control, if you want to say that. So people are just like, it's got to be something better. In that pause, I'm sorry, in that pause, they don't know, but they're shifting their focus from the front part of the mind, the intellectual part, to the back part, which is the awareness, and that's instantaneously connected to the human consciousness field. That's why people that aren't even mediums can sense presence near or feel sensations and what's going on here. That's what's happening.
I was gonna say something and I lost
I'm sorry I
my.
cut you
No,
off.
no, you're fine. No, you're absolutely fine. I wanted you to continue going. Okay, but long story short, there is a shift happening, and some of it can be intentional, right? Where we are actively meditating on an individual level to make sure that our awareness is more expansive. And then sometimes these, I think as a human race, like you said, we can no longer go the way that we're going. Oh, this is what I was going to say. Essentially, we're not this is not new. We're just remembering, like you said.
It's
We're
100%.
it's a remembering of our superhuman abilities, quote unquote.
Yeah,
And understanding that this is just part of who we are, right? This is part of the nature of this world, of this universe. And if we're going to evolve as a species, this is the next coming of that evolution. It's not a physical evolution per se, it's more of a cyclical, psychic evolution, mental consciousness evolution.
100%.
Okay.
And that's why we're here.
Yes, absolutely. So,
That's why we
mhm,
incarnate to remember.
yes.
We don't incarnate to only adapt to the human identity. It's great because that's what the lessons are, because you have to, when you're a child, infant, toddler, they don't have an identity yet. That's why they love everybody and they just love, see energy and they draw, they can see the colors and the hues of the human consciousness field and they draw these beautiful, vibrant colors trying to express what they see. They are the human self. They are still connected to essence. They are consciousness, pure consciousness. It's when they go to school and peer pressure and life, their identity is created. In that time, whatever it is, young adult to adulthood, that's where all your true experiences are. Because you forget the veil of forgetfulness, they say. And you are the human identity. That's why you take on all this pain and these moments and betrayal and heartbreak and grief and everything else, because you have to live it. You have to live the actual experience so your higher self can feel it. If we're consciousness, we are emotion, we're feeling. You learn through emotion by feeling it.
Mm,
The oversoul's not going to learn if I had it in a book. Your higher self's not going to understand if I give the encyclopedia. You live it as the human self version of that structure, and you endure that pain and that confusion and that feeling of hopelessness. That's how all aspects of your being in the structure evolve, because they feel it too. Also, other parallel versions of you feel it too. Overlap consciousness. Haven't you ever woken up that you just irritated someday? You don't even know why. Nothing happened, you just feel irritated. It's not yours. Another version of you is overwhelmed. So the higher self lifts some of that irritation and asks you to hold it for an hour or a day so that parallel self of yours can level out. Then the higher self gives it back to them because it's theirs to deal with. When you wake up sad for no reason, same exact thing. And when you feel overloaded, I'm going to go crazy. I can't shake this. All out of nowhere, you just feel calm. The higher self took it off if you gave it to somebody else. All consciousness. It's all consciousness.
Did you ever watch that movie, Everything Everywhere All at Once? I always bring this movie up because I feel like it's such a great example of what we're talking about in terms of consciousness and parallel lives and being
Yeah.
able to like hop from one timeline to the next. And I think people who kind of master this can probably see the different timelines they're on and how their life is going on down a certain path based on certain decisions that they make. Because I heard someone say one time that parallel lives split off, especially when it comes down to making very profound decisions in your life. The longer you spend on certain decisions, the bigger the timeline split is potentially, right? If you choose to go, if you're spending time trying to figure out should I go to this school versus this school, and you're thinking about it for so long, there's a parallel timeline or version of you that did go to the school that
Yeah,
you
of
chose not
course.
to and is living
Yeah.
out that life. But I say all that to say I think that movie does a great job of explaining that whole like different parallel lives timeline and how those parallel selves all affect each other potentially. But also I think there are two things I want to ask you, and they're going to split the conversation in different ways. So you let me know which one you want to answer first. I want to get to the mediumship part of the trance practice that you're talking about. And then I also want to ask more in-depth questions about reincarnation because we're talking about parallel lives, oversoul, etc. So where do you want to go first?
Okay. First, let's go back to what you said about the split in the trajectory.
Okay.
That definitely is happening on the timeline that you're aware of right now.
Mm.
But there is no time. There's
Right,
no
right.
time or space. So we see it as 2025. It could also be 1225.
That's true.
And we have no clue. So we're living in that incarnation as well. Okay, so we don't know, and we're not meant to know. Or else you would change your actions if you knew.
Yes.
But it also doesn't mean that we have to stay in the dark the entire journey. You see, somewhere in there that awakening happens, the remembrance happens, right? Incarnation, the way I see it, if there are multiple parallel realities, the oversoul created all these parallel realities. The higher self governs these parallel realities, watching them all, assisting you all. Again, taking someone's grief, giving somebody else for a little bit, brings it back again, mixes on pieces on a chessboard. When all of these timelines, when all of these incarnations have reached what they set out to accomplish. So if I awaken rapidly, I'm assisting another version of me that's waking slowly, and vice versa. You also have intergalactic parallel lives, and that's who helped me understand consciousness at a different level. Another version of me in the intergalactic reality. When all of these parallel versions, all aspects of consciousness of yourself reach whatever they're meant to reach, then the oversoul starts taking them away one at a time. Okay? That timeline of all those parallel realities is now finished. The human consciousness field, the human self, the awareness, goes back up to the oversoul. Not the higher, because if there's a few more still going on, the higher stuff still governs those. When they're all finished, everyone's back in the oversoul hub. It's all getting, the data is getting inputted in. And then the concept is starting to get created for the next line of incarnations. So it's not a past life like I lived in 1225, 1525, 1825, and 2025. That's how we see it through the lens of linear time. That's not a reality because there is no time. So when my human consciousness field is taken back to the oversoul, the auric field still remains in this reality. That's
What is
how
the auric
evidential,
field?
the outer layer of consciousness.
Okay.
The inner is the human consciousness, the outer is the auric field is the outer layer. That's where spirit impresses, communicates. So even that auric field remains, and in it is the residue of the life lived of that essence.
Mm.
That's how evidential mediumship takes place. People are tapping into the auric field of the spirit that left based on the connection to the loved one still present. That's how you connect an evidential.
Okay.
That's how you see ghosts and apparition and orbs, because the auric field remains in the reality it inhabited until the next human vessel is born, and the
Okay.
next line of incarnations are gathered to begin.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask you on the trans mediumship side of things, like what you're actually tapping into, if you're tapping into the collective consciousness field, or
Right.
if you're tapping into what you just described as the auric field that still remains after the human vessel is no longer
That's
alive on
evidential
Earth.
mediumship.
Okay.
Evidential mediumship, I'm working with other people's lost loved one's spirit. I'm tapping into their auric field. Trance is through the structure, through awareness. Trance doesn't touch the auric field. Trance is the awareness, human consciousness field, shared awareness of the higher self, and that's where trance begins. My previous guides that came through were guides that had human incarnation. They
Okay.
had lives. So they come in from the higher self level. They come in that way. And they come through consciousness, shared awareness. That's how I connect with them with awareness. And that's how they speak through my body. Now, these guys that I said I met when I was younger, they're in the angelic realm, above the oversoul in that infinite pure consciousness field. So they come in from the oversoul level, filtered through the higher self, where I'm already connected to, and still connect through awareness and speak through me. It's a whole different concept of trance now, but trance is only through awareness. That's why you get into that deeper state of consciousness where you're really lost. You don't even know you have a body anymore. You're breathing. Trance is different from evidential mediumship. Evidential mediumship, first of all, mostly all evidential mediums do not allow biologically their human brain hertz to drop to the theta. They remain in the alpha. So we're speaking now in the beta. Our brain hertz are 13.5 to 30. When you meditate, hypnosis, evidential mediumship, you breathe and you slower the brain hertz down from 13 to 9.5. When you go to trance, you have to go to the theta, which is 9 to 3.5, and then 3 and below is delta, you're asleep. Every human being, their brain hurts slow in order to go to sleep every night. And when they awake, it goes back up and accelerates. That's why in the morning, you don't want to get up, you hit the snooze button, that beautiful bliss state. Your brain hurts up between 3.5 and 5.5. That's the heart of trance. So when you stay in that state, 3.5 to 5.5 for an hour and a half, whatever the trance session is, you are strictly in the awareness connection. So your awareness is connected to that human consciousness field, and that's where you connect to the higher self, and that's how you open this channel and spirit speaks through you. They're not random spirits that speak through you. People say it's not possible.
Okay, so when you're connecting from that, like you're getting into a trance state to connect with someone's loved one, you're connecting with their loved one's higher self, not
No,
their,
I don't connect with someone's loved one. That's evidential mediumship.
okay.
When I bring in evidential mediumship, I connect to your loved one because they're here to speak to you. So I connect to the auric field of the loved one, and I connect to your human consciousness field as the sitter, and it's like an interfacing of both, so I
Right,
could feel your emotions, but I could understand why the spirit's coming in, and from the residue within the auric field, I know if it was your mother or your father or a connection, how they've been passed. I don't, they just don't have the memories that we hold.
right.
But the memories are in the sitter's human consciousness field, and that lost loved one is helping touch into it to bring it through my awareness so I can understand it logically and speak to you about it. Trance is different. Trance, the physical form is the vessel. Trance is purely the consciousness of that spirit blending with my consciousness, oversoul, higher self, into the awareness field that connects to my body, and that's how they speak.
Okay, got it. That makes sense. Because, but again, when I hear of trans mediumship and how people have described it before, they'll say it's that person's spirit taking over your body, and
Yes,
like they
no.
jump there inside your body. You have their
Yeah, no.
mannerisms, and basically that spirit talks through you. But the way someone could listen to this and think you're saying the same thing, but you're not saying the same thing.
Again, look at it this way. You ever look at the junkyards? That big compressor that crushes the cars?
Yes.
That compressor is the power of your soul. If it
Mm.
was in the body, it would crush your body like the compressors in those junkyards. Way too powerful. It's impossible for your soul to be in the body. It's impossible. So if my soul's not in my body, how could another soul enter my body and take over when I'm in trance?
Okay, you just said something interesting. So the soul is not in the body.
No, the breath anchors your soul to the body.
So when people say, "Oh, do you have a soul?" that's an incorrect
Even
thing
all
to say.
those movies, even Ghost, where Patrick Swayze comes out of the body and he's still in his clothes and he's flying to heaven. It's beautiful folklore for movies, but it's not a reality.
So have you heard of the term NPCs? They talk about non-player characters in this quote unquote holographic matrix of a universe, right? Where these non-player characters don't have a soul the way the rest of us do, quote unquote, and they're just background characters. They go to work every day, they eat, they sleep, but they don't really have a purpose outside of that, right? But they differentiate NPC characters from others because others have a soul inside of them. So have you heard of that concept and theory?
No, and again, people are going to create whatever impression, interpretation they want. People are also listening to the old teachings of this realm. A lot of it is fear-based, a lot of it is misinterpretation. Anybody who is an incarnation is still consciousness. Nobody is governed. Nobody, no human body is active without a breath. The breath anchors your human self, your essence to the body. So anybody who's breathing and living has a soul, or else they couldn't move. There'd be no breath. There'd be no activity. Everyone. And with that, again, is the structure. Awareness in the center of human consciousness field, auric field outer layer, the whole architecture of origin, perceiver, oversoul, higher self, human self, all of it. It doesn't change. It's never changed.
So then when people die, I watch these different documentaries where they videotape someone dying and they see like some light or essence leaving their body, right? You know the term, their soul left their body. What do you think
That's what they
they're
think it is. That's what they
capturing?
think it is. Again, even when if you see the iconography of Jesus, he has a halo around his head. Okay? When people are really connected with their consciousness, that human consciousness field, you can see a color, but it's only going to be white. When people say, "Oh, I see your auric field as yellow or blue or purple," that's a human perception. And each one is symbolic on why they're seeing it, what their perception is of that person. It's going to be a faint white, but consciousness does not have color. Spirit does not have bodies. This is all created stories of this world. Why? To instill more fear, to gain more control. Even the ones that are talking about these two different aspects of humans, there's a motive behind it to create more fear so they can gain control.
Speaking of control, I think this is a great place to talk about reincarnation, right? Because I've been seeing a lot of theories come out that the whole concept of reincarnation is a fear-based concept or
Yeah,
structure because the idea that we have to keep coming back to learn lessons, but then we come back and that we go through quote unquote this veil of forgetfulness. So we
yeah.
don't even understand what quote unquote karma or things we need to learn to clear our karmic debt. And the whole idea of karmic debt also is a form of control.
100%.
So
Yeah.
I just want to hear your thoughts on reincarnation
Yeah,
and
I wrote about that in my first and third book, right? There is no karma, right? What is karma? You need to live a a righteous life. You're going to be judged or go to heaven and hell. Okay? People say I'm suffering through ancestral trauma. Again, reincarnation means that you lived, died, lived again, died, lived again, died. It's not totally incomplete, but they're basing it on one timeline they know. That makes it incomplete. You reincarnate, but not in that aspect. You're gonna, when all the parallel lives cease to exist, a new line of consciousness through parallel creations are once more inserted for other lessons that the perceiver wants to learn. So you're always embodying another incarnation based on what your perceiver wants to learn. And there'll be a time when it stops, but there is no time, so we can't perceive when that's going to happen. So there is no reincarnation, there is no karma. But again, intentionally they do this. Even heaven and hell. You know how many people in this world believe in heaven and hell? People view the veil of forgetfulness, okay, because there's another reality, another realm, the spirit realm and the human realm, separation, heaven and hell, separation, reincarnation, karma, separation. They instill separation in our psyches in order to create fear so we could follow their mandates and their laws and their doctrines. What is the veil of forgetfulness? Right here. What is heaven and hell? Right here. It's all here. It's the human identity and the human self. If I soften my human identity, I've softened the veil of forgetfulness. I remember my human self. I remember my higher self. I remember my oversoul. I remember the perceiver. That's the awakening, the remembrance. That's when my veil thins.
Mm.
When it thickens, I'm only my human identity and I don't believe in any of this nonsense. That's the veil of forgetfulness. That's awakening. But it has to be there because you have to still experience the human identity in this incarnation. You're not going anywhere. You never left. Where you going? How can there be karma? How can I do anything wrong if there's no right or wrong? And you said it before, the trajectory is switch on decision making or different parts of your life, the arc switches. Where is the right and wrong? It's still growth. What I perceive as wrong is a good in a parallel life. There's never, the possibilities are endless. There's never a right or wrong. So there's nothing is definitive. What are you going to say?
So I was going to say, then what is the purpose of having this, again, quote unquote, potentially false teaching of reincarnation? Because people still reincarnate lifetime after lifetime. So my understanding, how I used to think was when someone leaves this body, they automatically remember every single thing. But the more I talk to psychics, right, and people that study this quantum phenomena, it's seems like the other side is not, they're different. I don't want to say levels, but different awareness of consciousness on that side as well, on the non-physical, quote unquote, spiritual realm. And if someone wholeheartedly believes that they're supposed to reincarnate back on Earth to continue to learn lessons, then that's the path that they continue to walk down because that's the belief system that they have. What are your thoughts on that? Is that how it works, or do you agree with anything I just said?
Okay, we as humans have memory because of the frontal lobes in our brain, right? Memory is constructed based on biology, on the brain. The brain is physical, the body is physical. Whatever you're remembering, buying a house, buying a car, your first job, whatever the case is, these memories you have are based on the human identity. These stay here. Even if I bring in a lost loved one and bring in your Aunt Mary and she says something you don't remember, you might not remember in the sitting, but then you're going to call your mother. She's going to remember it. She's going to validate it for you because even that ancestral line is the residue in that auric field I mentioned earlier. Okay, so memory, let's get that straight. Your Aunt Mary's not going to come with memories, remembering your birthday and what happened when you were 7 years old. That's not going to happen. But that's still in your subconscious and your memory that they're tapping into because that's earthbound. It pertains to the physical incarnation. When you experience heartache and you experience it 15 times in one lifetime, each experience offers a different shade to that same heartache. The more shades, the average of it is the wisdom born, and that goes to the oversoul. Okay? We, as the physical being, have no control when we're going to die. That's why we don't know the date, and when we're going to come back. Because it's not about an individual journey. It's about the collective of all those parallel lives and all the average of every single wisdom, of every single emotion ever felt fear, confusion, betrayal. We said 1,000 of them across all different parallel lives, how they acted in their timeline with their counterparts, with those relationships, all of it. Who evolved by awakening, who didn't, who helped the other one out, all of it as a collective. When that's all done and that's going back to the over, then a new life cycle begins, a new cycle. Now imagine all these, imagine just your this human life, all your years, everything you've encountered, every moment, every experience, every relationship is a lot for one life, right? Now you don't know how many parallel lives you have. It could be 10, it could be 1,000. That's why I'm saying the oversoul is so vast, it houses all of this. And this
Okay.
is one thread. Imagine how many you've already lived.
So what I'm understanding is like it's not about karma or
Mm-mm.
collecting correcting any sort of karmic debt.
Mm.
Incarnate reincarnation still happens because there's that want and desire from the oversoul to have different perspectives and
The-
the perceiver to have different perspectives and use those different perspectives and channel that back into the overall wider consciousness that
yeah,
all beings, whether spirit or in
yeah,
physical form, are experiencing. And the perceiver is not necessarily the oversoul. That the perceiver
right,
is what is monitoring or looking at the different
right,
perspectives incarnated from the
right.
oversoul. But then if we're all from the oversoul,
Well,
if
from
no,
the infinite field of consciousness.
yes, if we're all from the
That's where your perceiver is.
right, if we're all from the infinite field of consciousness and we all come from the creator, then do we all have the same soul technically? Then does it become semantics to talking about the
Great
oversoul, the higher
question.
self?
This is what I say. Remember when I said to you that your soul is the breath that anchors into the physical form? My breath is the same exact breath with every parallel expression of me going on right now. My breath is the same breath as my higher self. My breath is the same breath as my oversoul. My breath is the same breath as my perceiver. The perceiver came from the creator, it's the creator's breath. So every single consciousness born from the creator shares the same breath. So even you and I right now share the same breath. That's why when people judge, when they're sexist, bigots, racists, whatever, how stupid can you be? You share the same breath with the person that you're judging because we're the same. We're all in the same infinite field of consciousness. You reside there. We're all there. The construct, oversoul, higher self, human self is only for the incarnation. We're all still our version of the perceiver in that infinite field of consciousness with the creator. We never left there. That's who we are. But look where humanity has gone because they keep instilling fear. So you're not reincarnating the way they say it.
Mm.
It's an incarnation through shared consciousness to serve its purpose across a field of consciousness, across parallel realities occurring at the same time. Multiple growth.
Very
Isn't that
fascinating.
cool?
Very
Yeah.
cool.
And even right now, we didn't meet by chance. These are soul agreements. So here's my oversoul. Here's your oversoul. Here's 500 other oversouls. And they all put the maps together digitally, all over multi-second. Okay, boom. Niko's enemy drew me at this time in the path. They're going to speak about this and open this field up, and then they're going to come in and they overlap everybody. So there's no random meetings. You can meet somebody at an airport, walk right past them and look at them. It's soul recognition. I know this person, never saw them before in my life. Soul recognition. A moment somebody stops you in the corner and talks to you about something, again, meant to happen. This is meant to happen. You born to your parents meant to happen. Everything is consciousness. So everything is deliberate and intentional. We, with the limited human comprehension, could never understand why, because you're not supposed to. If you knew, you'd live differently.
You have opened my mind in ways that I did, like, I was not expecting in a great way, which I'm very excited about because I'm very excited to go back and listen to this conversation and really sit with the idea of the perceiver, the oversoul, and just really make sure I get a really grounded understanding of everything we talked about because I think it's mind blowing. It's very fascinating, especially the stuff about consciousness, which is part of what I'm studying in school right now. And
Nice.
I I know that we were supposed to have a trans medium demonstration, and I do.
Next
But
time.
I think, yes, exactly. I think that deserves, because I don't want to rush through it, and I think
Yeah.
that deserves its own space. This
Yeah.
is, I think we'll have a part one and a part two. That's how I see it rolling
Absolutely.
out on in my head when I publish these episodes. Part one, this is just an introduction to level set and get people to understand what's coming up next with the trans medium session. And it gives me time to even prepare even further questions
Yeah.
I want to ask you when you're in that
Well, you're
state.
not going to ask me. You're going to ask
Yes, your
collective that
team.
comes through me
Your
and get their perspective of this.
exactly. And I want to learn more about that collective. So part two is going to be us learning more about Noah, which is the
Yep.
team that speaks through you. And then we're going to get into that session. And the perceiver concept is so fascinating to me. So I
Yeah,
think
I
I'm going to
know.
sit with
I
that a little
know.
bit. And I might have more questions for you in regards to that in part two, but this has been mind blowing for me. So
That
I'm
that's
yes.
that's the complete map of human consciousness that I'm writing about.
Mm,
That's why this book I'm on right now is The Oversoul Beyond the Self. But you can't write about the oversoul without understanding the perceiver.
yes.
So I actually have two books happening here. When I write about the oversoul, I start writing about the perceiver. So I have two at the same time,
Mm.
which is crazy. I've never done it in my life. So now I have more of the outline of the perceiver, and I'm really focused on the oversoul right now to get this done, and then go to the perceiver, right?
And
And then the one after that
mhm.
is human self versus human identity, the veil of forgetfulness revealed. What we were just talking about. See, good stuff. It's fun.
Extremely good stuff. And and this series is called Threads of Infinity.
No, that's the first three, the trilogy. The trilogy is the Threads of Infinity. It's about awakening the reader, human to higher self. That's where I thought we were going to end, but then they kept continuing and continuing. This fourth one, the Oversoul, we're expanding the framework, the architecture. Then the Perceiver is the origin, revealing the ultimate witness. Because again, it's a witness. One more thing. We said that your Perceiver is in your infinite field of consciousness, right, above the Oversoul. But throughout your life, the most difficult moments, you've sensed a presence near you.
Yes.
That's your perceiver witnessing.
Is that what people call the spirit as well? Because people distinguish between the spirit and the soul. So in this case, could the spirit be synonymous to what you're calling the
Yeah,
perceiver?
yeah. They're saying spirit and soul because again, they're perceiving the soul's in the body and the spirit's outside of the body. But it's the same. There's nothing in the body.
Hmm.
So when you feel that, like someone's looking at, watching you, you feel somebody very close, notice the time in your life that that's happening. It's always a milestone. There's something really bad, something really good. Because your perceiver is also around this funnel of consciousness and is able to witness you. Witness, only watch, does not interrupt, does not interfere. The higher self is guiding you. The oversoul already created the diagram of this life. The perceiver is just watching
Hmm.
your parallel life and everybody else's. That's the intelligence we are as spirit. So that's why I'm saying when you split up in separation, I'm this human person. I have to live and find salvation to go back to God in heaven. What about your own soul? We undervalue who we are. And we definitely undervalue our intelligence as soul, essence, and that's intentional. If everybody knew that they were a perceiver, that they knew they were an intelligent soul, that they knew they had this hub of intellect, library of all incarnations, why would anybody go find an intermediary at church?
Exactly.
So every single religious institution would collapse overnight. And if those did, so would governmental agencies. So power is much more important than the truth.
I recently did research and I read this book by this Canadian psychologist who his name is Richard Maurice Buck. Again, late 19th century to early 20th century. That's really where when he was alive, and he wrote this book called Cosmic Consciousness. Now, some of the things he said there were a little bit sexist and had like racism undertones. You don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, but the good stuff he talked about, which I found fascinating, wrote a paper on, is this idea of cosmic consciousness, which is the next frontier of human evolution. And in the book, he was just saying that by the time we get to this level of awareness, which is the next frontier of evolution, then religion will cease to exist. There will be no need for
Yeah,
religion because it's a
right.
remembrance that we are that spirit, that perceiver, that understanding,
Yeah,
that oversoul. And it's
exactly
like
right.
everything about that concept will be a part of our existence and not be separated or relegated to a gathering, which we
Right.
might call church. And he basically, the dismantling of religion and all these other different systems that are currently in place, which again, I find extremely fascinating. That kind of sounds similar to what what you're talking about.
And we need a bridge to get there. And now you understand what your sole purpose is. See? We are the bridge. I write about it, I speak about it, my trans guys speak about it. You're offering a platform for it to be heard. You're going to start speaking about it. You're going to remember yourself. We're all positioned right now exactly where we should be because we're bringing the truth through our own remembrance. When it starts overlapping here, it spreads. And that's how we get the future generations to that. We're the bridge,
On the front lines,
which is great.
to say
It's a
the
great,
least.
it's a great, it's an honor to serve Spirit this way. See, people are going to forget about me, but I realize that my manuscripts are going to outlive me. That's why I'm writing about the architecture. That's why there's 10 books. I'm like, 10? I didn't want to do three, but it's not about what I want. That's the human identity. I get it. You see, I get it. And each one is going to be really intricate. I'll tell you what, when I do finish the Oversoul book, I'm going to send you the manuscript PDF so you could read it, and then you could write a praise and I could include it to the in the book. How's that?
I would love to read the Oversoul book and the Percy. I can, and honestly, to be quite honest with you, like I said, I'm actively studying conscious. I'm taking two classes on consciousness next semester, and I'm going to be taking a lot more classes on it and coming up with my own theories. So I feel like merging quote unquote scientific study, merging that with spiritual practitioners like yourself and finding parallels between what you're saying and putting that into my papers as additional evidence. I think
Yeah.
that's also going to continue to propel what you're talking about forward because what you're saying, like I said, I've heard it in different from different psychologists and psychiatrists who've
See
try
that?
to work and theorize on the evolution of what they call the mind, which we're now calling consciousness. So, very fascinating, very fascinating. Thank you so much, Nico. We're definitely having you. I'm definitely having you back on the show again for
Absolutely.
part two. But I have to ask you, have you shifted in perspective on anything recently? Because I think we're always shifting, right?
Yes, the key thing here is, like I said earlier, if the more we can soften our human identity, the more we open that passageway to our pure consciousness. And like I said, higher self is where a lot of us are there already. That intuition, they're just letting it flood in. You're not doubting it anymore. You're starting to see differently. You're seeing with softer eyes. That's really viewing from the higher self's lens. A lot of humanity is there. The oversoul level is really intense because there's much more remembrance occurring. It's like multiple downloads at once. It's like brain overload that you really need a day to a week to a month to really process it all. Right? I have pages and pages of notes. But the amazing part is that it's always shifting. You're not reaching when I'm not saying, okay, what's next? What's next? As a human mind would do it. I'm just humbled that I've gotten this much exposure to consciousness and remembrance. Now I'm starting to tweak into once in a while the perceiver realm. That is absolutely incredible because that makes my trance, because again, my guides are in that infinite field of consciousness and it's very emotional and very intimate. So when I'm in trance and I tap into that, it's like I could just feel unconditional love in its purest sense. And that's who we are.
Mm,
That's we're touching into our perceiver in that level. And it's, oh my God, wow. But then you have to have the contrast. When I come back out of trance, I want to cry. I could feel everybody's pain on this planet. And it's, whoa, what a reality I live in. So it's very humbling. It's
mm,
beautiful. But I know what I'm going to experience again when I die because
yeah,
I never left that experience, right? I'm
yeah.
still there. It's just the shift of consciousness, which is amazing. So if everybody on this planet can actually experience that once, they're gonna change how they act as humans. How could you not? So that's why I hope all these books and courses I teach and these transmissions that I hope that people are starting to just the seeds are being planted and they're starting to sprout and they start changing how they act towards another human, understanding that they too are a soul essence. And I
Absolutely.
hope that starts spreading around humanity and there's no more judgment, bigotry, racism, sexism, none of that junk because we're all the same.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thank you, Niko. Where can people find you if they want to get your books, if they want to work with you? And I know you offer different services or just learn more about you in general.
Yeah, the best is NikoTheMedium.com, NIKO themedium.com. Because again, I have my books are on Amazon, Nico Capuzos, but I have a link on my website. I teach courses. They can even book your own private session one-to-one with Noah. That's always a lot of fun. They can speak directly to spirit, get guidance, ask their questions. It's always powerful. Or join, I even have free circles Wednesdays and Thursdays, 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Wednesdays is trance development and Thursdays evidential development. From the website, you just click the button, it goes right to the Zoom link. So NikoTheMedium.com, I've made it very simple that everything is there. Every course, Facebook pages, the books, all of that stuff. And of
Amazing.
course, they could always schedule a free 30-minute consultation. If they're not certain where their journey is going, I'd love to help them out and see if we can figure out something together for them. So NikoTheMedium.com.
Amazing. I'm going to leave that link in the show notes. Thank you, Niko, for stopping by. Shifting
Thank you.
Dimensions. I will look forward to speaking with you again.
Me too. Thanks a lot.